Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam, pangam langyate girim, yat kripatamaham vande, Shri Gurudinataranam, Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for joining today. We will resume our discussion on the instructions by Maharaj Prithu. So, quick recap, the chapter started with the citizens welcoming Maharaj Prithu by decorating the city and by spreading auspicious items, by personally coming and greeting them by sweet words and gestures and prayers, with Prithu Maharaj reciprocating in kind with the love of the citizens. Then Maitreya describes the glories of the rule of Maharaj Prithu. And following this, from the verse 21, are the instructions by Maharaj Prithu to his citizens. So we were at verse 23. 21 verse was simply Maharaj Prithu saying that listen to me attentively. And in verse 22, he spoke about Varnashram. And I spent a fair bit of time discussing Varnashram, the kinds of Varnashram, Karma Varnashram, Devi Varnashram, Srila Prabhupada's take on Varnashram, what actually is the potency of Varnashram. So that kind of sets the context of the subsequent instruction by Maharaj Prithu. So resuming from 4:21-23. Tasya me tadanushthana yanahu brahmavadina lokasyukam sandoha yasya tushyati deshtadrak. Maharaj Prithu said, I think that upon the execution of my duties as king, I shall be able to achieve the desirable objectives described by experts in Vedic knowledge. This destination is certainly achieved by the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of all destiny. Previously, Maharaj Prithu had said that the following of the Varnashram Dharma will bring good fortune to the citizens. Now he's saying that it will also bring him good fortune. And the principle of Varnashram is following the prescribed duties. So Vishwanath Chakravarti comments that Prithu Maharaj is saying that I receive my monthly, seasonal and yearly wages from the Lord. What the followers of Vedas claim as the worlds to be attained by performance of my duties will be mine as well. These are the places I will attain in my next life according to my desire, and which are the fulfillment of my desires. Kam, Sandoha, when the Lord, Distadrik, is satisfied with me. In 4:20:14, it is said that it is most beneficial for the king to protect the population because he enjoys 1/6 of the pious acts of the citizens. So what we'll see is that Maharaj Prithu will take the citizens on a journey. That he is talking first mostly of the pious benefits of Varnashram, both to the citizens and for himself. But he is introducing the component of bhakti gradually. So here he says the destination is achieved by the pleasure of the personality of Godhead. Now, he hasn't really spoken about bhakti right now. But what is the pleasure in this verse? The pleasure is that the Vedas emanate from the Lord. So the instructions of the Veda are the instructions by the Lord, and when one follows the instructions, one pleases the Lord. And because the Lord is pleased, he awards him with the appropriate destination. So most of the facts that will be revealed by Maharaj Prithu are ones that we are very familiar with. Srila Prabhupada writes extensively on them, as I mentioned, because Varnashram Dharma is close to his heart, and he repeats the points for emphasis. So following his lead, I'll also repeat for emphasis, not to the same extent. I'll try and summarize it. So Prabhupada, in the purport of this verse, he contrasts the achievements of one who follow the Vedas to those who do not. And he says, people do not know the law of nature, which are the rulings of the personality of Godhead. Because they are atheists of the first order, they have no faith in the existence of the Lord. And this gross ignorance, including even the so-called scientist and philosopher, makes life a risky situation in which human beings do not know whether they are making progress in life. According to the Bhagavatam 7.5.30, they're simply progressing to the darkest region of material existence. Adanta Govir Vishatam Tamishram. The Krishna consciousness movement has therefore been started to give philosophers, scientists, and people in general the proper knowledge about the destiny of life. Everyone should take advantage of this movement and learn the real goal of life. Okay. Verse 24. Yadudare karam raja prajadharme sa ashilkshayan prajanam shamalam bhunte bhagam cha swayam jati saha. Any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of varna and ashram, but who simply exacts tolls and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. In addition to such degradation, the king also loses his own fortune. So Maharaj Prithu is repeating the same message that Lord Vishnu had given him. So in the previous chapter, in the verse 14, same message was given by Maharaj to Maharaj Prithu by the Lord. So the Lord had encouraged stating that the king that is properly training the citizens in Varnashram gets 1/6 of their pious reactions. And who is not is getting a portion of their impious reactions. So here, Maharaj Prithu is giving the same message to the citizens. So essentially, this is a restating of the law of karma. You have a duty to do. If you do it, you get pious results. If you do not do it, you get impious results. It is the king's duty to train the citizens in Varnashram Dharma. And if he does it, he gets pious benefits. If he does not, he gets impious benefits. So Maharaj Prithu is presenting a powerful argument from both sides. So previously he said that if you follow the Varnashram Dharma, I will reach the ultimate destination because of my being party to the pious benefits that you accrue. Here is giving the opposite picture. If you do not, then I will suffer the impious activities performed by you and I will lose my good fortune. So Prabhupada says this whole transference of karma is very subtle. And he says that, for example, if one eats in a place which is very sinful, he shares the resultant reaction of the sinful activities performed there. It is a Vedic system, therefore, for a householder to call Brahmanas and Vaishnavas to eat at ceremonial performance in his house, because the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas can immunize him from sinful activities. But it is not the duty of rigid Vaishnavas and Brahmanas to accept invitations everywhere. And then he says for prasadam it is okay. So this is the give and take, that the Grahasthas, they invite the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas to eat in their house because by the influence of their piety, any impious reactions are driven away. And then Prabhupada cautions also that it also affects the one who is eating, that he will get affected by the impiety around. So that's why Prabhupada says that one should not accept invitations everywhere. The exception being where there is prasad that is distributed. Where there is prasad offered to Krishna and then being offered, there's no question of impiety. Prabhupada then says there are many subtle laws which are practically unknown to people in general, but the Krishna consciousness movement is very scientifically distributing all this Vedic knowledge for the benefit of the people of the world. So Prabhupada is kind of beating the drum roll for ISKCON because essentially Prithu Maharaj is preaching for the welfare of the citizens. And that is exactly what ISKCON is doing. So there is a harmony in the pastime over here, or at least this portion of the pastime. The Prithu Maharaj is speaking things for the benefit of the citizens, and same activity is being done, not just speaking, but also involving them directly. So Prabhupada is making this point for emphasis. Okay, verse 25. Tat praja bhartar pindartham swartham evan ashuvah kuru tadoksaja diyas tarime nugraha kritaha. Prithu Maharaj continued, therefore, my dear citizens, for the welfare of your king after his death, you should execute your duties properly in terms of your position of Varna and Ashram, and should always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead within your hearts. By doing so, you will protect your own interest and you will bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death. So this verse is essentially a summation of the previous two verses, where he talked about both the good and the bad part of following and not following Varnashram. He says, therefore, tat, to indicate that he is summarizing. And Prithu Maharaj is acting like a father, talking to his sons, who by nature are affectionate to the father, but because they're immature, they could be naughty. And because of the immaturity, they may not care so much about their own welfare. So they may do acts that are harmful. But Prithu Maharaj is playing the father card over here, saying that even if you don't care about your own welfare, you should, because of your love for me, you should care about my welfare. And sometimes parents will do that to the child. They say that if you love me, then eat this. The child may be not wanting to eat healthy food, they may want to eat candy, and the mother might say that if you really love me, then eat this, eat broccoli, don't eat candy. So they're not appealing, so the mother is not appealing so much to the nutrient value or the harmful effect of candy, but simply relying on the child's love for her. Now, Prithu Maharaj has spoken knowledge, but ultimately he is invoking the affection of the citizens for him. So in the previous verse, he had said that he would suffer the impious reactions. Now he's saying that if you love me and you do what I say, then there are three benefits that will accrue to me. Firstly, as a king, I will get a portion of your piety. Secondly, you yourselves will be elevated. Now, he doesn't make this point in this verse. He'll make it in the next verse. I'm putting it here for completeness. And third, which is the most important, is that by practicing Varnashram, you will gradually develop bhakti. And so he's saying, making this point that in terms of your position of Varna and Ashram, you should always think about the personality of Godhead. Right? So this is now connecting Varnashram with bhakti. That has always been the intention of Prithu Maharaj. That is including, he's introducing Varnashram as a stepping stone to bhakti. And then later on we'll say that he's actually introducing bhakti as a stepping stone to something else that he will reveal later on in the chapter. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada notes the word adhokshadhiya. Adhokshadhiya, he says, is Krishna consciousness. He says they're very important words in this verse, and he gives a brief how to practice Krishna consciousness by quoting 927 Yad Karoshi Yadasnashi, that you offer everything, whatever you do, whatever you acts you do, whatever sacrifices you do, you offer to me. Now, a question to you over here is that there are other verses in Bhagavad Gita that talk about bhakti. Right? There's verses like same as Sarvadanam Pratyaje, Yamanmana Bhagavad Bhakto. Here Prabhupada is quoting this particular verse, Yat Karoshi Yadasnashi Yad Juhoshidashira. Any thoughts on why?
Is it because, Prabhu, that it encompasses majority of the people, because not particularly addressing the pure devotees or those who are in the path of pure devotional service, but even others who are not so elevated, not so inclined towards pure devotional service also can be included in this by this verse. Is that, I don't know whether I'm right on that.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other thoughts?
Prabhu, because it's connected to Varnashram, because everybody is in their own ashrama. And as we know, if you give something, it's karma related also. And as Prabhu said, we can see ourselves. It's not bhakti, because when we go at the later part of the chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it's more about bhakti. It's more karma yoga mix.
Very good. Yeah, both answers are actually spot on, because essentially Prithu Maharaj here is talking about bhakti that is based on Varnashram. So what is this? This is Bhakti Mishra Karma. It's not Shuddha Bhakti. And the verse that Prabhupada quotes, Yat Karoshi Yadasnashi, essentially describes Karma Yoga. The very fact that Karoshi is there. So Prithu Maharaj is not talking to his citizens about Shuddha Bhakti for the reasons that Nanda Prabhu said, that wide audience. Difficult to talk to everybody about pure devotional service. So he's talking to them about bhakti that emanates from karma. And that's why Prabhupada is quoting the relevant verse. Vishnu Chakravarti writes over here that King Prithu is saying that therefore, O citizens, like offerings after death for the person's welfare, you should do your duties for my benefit after death. If you do your duties, I will become successful. Let me not have rebirth in this world. And then Vishnu Chakravarti said, Prithu Maharaj is describes the individual duty. He says, O persons who lace their intelligence in the Lord, Adokshadiya, worship the Lord. This is confirmed in the Gita statement. Vishnu Chakravarti quotes 12.8. That Maye Manatsva Mai Buddhim Nivesha, fix your mind in me and place your intelligence in me. So Maharaj Prithu has now, through while appealing to the affection of the citizens for his welfare and their own welfare, has now established the need to perform Varnashram while thinking of the Lord. Next verse, 26. Yuyam tadnanumodadadvam pitra devarashayo malaha kartu shastu ranujya anuchnat tulyam yat pretyatat phalam. I request all the pure-hearted demigods, forefathers, and saintly persons to support my proposal. For after death, the result of an action is equally shared by its doer, the director, and its supporter. Prabhupada writes that King Prithu therefore wanted his citizens to cooperate fully with him. For if they assented, they would enjoy the same profit as he after death. So when Prithu Maharaj is talking about those who award the results of the karma. So these are the devas, the pitras, and the sadhus. So he's invoking them to say that just like I will benefit by you doing your prescribed duties, you will also benefit by cooperating fully with me. So Prabhupada says, if Prithu Maharaj as a perfect king were elevated to the heavenly planets, the citizens who cooperated by approving his methods would also be elevated with him. So approving means that they actually follow his instructions. And Prabhupada again talks about the more contemporary role of ISKCON. He says that since the Krishna consciousness movement going on at the present moment is genuine, perfect, and authorized, and is following the footsteps of Prithu Maharaj, anyone who cooperates with this movement or accepts its principles will get the same results as the workers who are actively propagating Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada drawing a parallel. Prithu Maharaj is saying, I'm giving you instructions. And if you follow them, then because of my potency, he says, I request the demigods, forefathers, and saintly persons to support my proposal. What is the proposal? That after death, the actions or the results of the action will be equally shared by the director and the supporter. So Prithu Maharaj is the director and the citizens are the supporter. Srila Prabhupada is invoking the same principle over here, that the devotees are preaching and those who support the devotees will also get the same result. Let's go to verse 27. Asti yagyapati nama keshanchid narasattamaha iha mutra cha lakshyante jyotsnavatya kvachit bhavaha. My dear respectable ladies and gentlemen, according to the authoritative statements of Shastra, there must be a supreme authority who is able to award the respective benefits of our present activities. Otherwise, why should there be persons who are unusually beautiful and powerful, both in this life and in the life after death? So this is an interesting statement Maharaj Prithu is saying, where he is trying to establish the presence of Lord. So he has been making a lot of statements on the strength of the scriptures, which are based on the strength of the Lord. So to close the loop, he is now reassuring the citizens that there has to be God. And what is the praman for that? He gives two pramans for that. One he gives is Shabda praman, and the other that he gives is Pratyaksha praman. So Jiva Goswami, he makes this point that Pratyaksha praman, when it collaborates, the Shabda praman becomes even more powerful. Generally, our understanding is that Pratyaksha is the weakest. Stronger than Pratyaksha is Anuman, and stronger is Shabda. Stronger than Shabda is Pratyaksha, which is collaborating the Shabda. Right? So let's assume I say to you that if you chant, you will feel peaceful. And you start chanting just based on Shabda Praman. And you chant and you actually start feeling peaceful. That is Pratyaksha. That is experiential. Now that Praman instills faith. If you had experiencing the opposite effect, I'm saying you chant and you feel peaceful and you're actually feeling more agitated and more disturbed, then the Shabda Praman loses its potency. So Prithu Maharaj is saying that the Lord is described by the authoritative statements of Shastra, Pratyaksha, the Shabda Praman. And then he says that there must be a supreme authority, otherwise where will people be unusually beautiful and powerful in this life and life after death? So here he is referring to the law of karma. Now, why are some people born with certain opulences and other persons not? So Vishwanath Chakravarti has a pretty long purport on this, that he says that Prithu Maharaj is telling the citizens that, one may say to Prithu Maharaj that, my dear king, it looks like you are trying to institute the worship of the Lord. It looks like you're trying to preach bhakti. But how is that possible? Because you're the son of Vena. And Vena, he accepted the teachings of Kaivalya. So Kaivalya is basically impersonalism, speculation. So Vishnu Chakravarti is saying a citizen might say to Prithu Maharaj in this way. So with an opposite intention, Prithu Maharaj says that some persons are of the opinion that the Supreme Lord, called the Lord of Sacrifice, exists. And those who do not have this opinion, he says that you should not doubt them. And let me prove it to you. What is the proof? That by your own sense perception, you know that there are people with very beautiful bodies in certain places. And on the other extreme, there are people with very ugly bodies. So people get various degrees of beauty because of past pious actions or lack of past pious actions. So actions alone being material and unconscious, Vishnu Chakravarti is saying that actions that alone are material and unconsciousness, they cannot create the cycle of cause and effect. Right? If you do the action, and if you're in a lawless state and you go and you break the law, then there's no implication of it. If you're in a state where the principles of law are being applied, then you break the law, there will be some punishment. So what does it mean? That when people are getting rewarded for pious activities, there is somebody who is overseeing this. So then Vishwanath Chakravarti says is that one may say that these are the devas. Then he quotes the Antaryami Shruti, which basically says that the demigods are not independent, but they are dependent of the Lord. So what is the conclusion that Vishwanath Chakravarti is trying to convey? That one should conclude that the variety is possible only because of the Supreme Lord, who has the ability to do, not do, or do differently. Right? Action and action and differentiated action. Right? So do, not do, or do differently. When there is difference in the worship of the Lord, there is also difference in result. And when there is no worship of the Lord, there is no result. So essentially, this verse is approaching those who are rebellious. Right? Previous verses, Prithu Maharaj was speaking to the citizens who were affectionate to him, who are pious. So he's speaking piety, he's speaking about results after death. He's invoking affection to him, saying, I will benefit. Now, he also knows that there will be a group of citizens who are envious of him, who are atheists. So he's speaking to them. So one of the first arguments that such people who will present when somebody is saying something is that you keep saying that after death this will happen and we need to please the Lord. But what is the proof that there is a higher power? And Prithu Maharaj therefore gives two proofs, Shabda Praman and Pratyaksh Praman. Srila Prabhupada again has an elaborate purport on it, and he talks about various atheistic propensities and their fallacy. So he essentially talks about three different kinds of atheists. One who basically consider this a chance philosophy. Chance philosophy is that it is just by chance that one person is beautiful and another person is ugly. Prabhupada says that atheists believe in the atheistic Sankhya philosophy of the combination of Prakriti and Purusha. So this is the atheistic Sankhya philosophy, not of the one by Lord Kapila, son of Devahuti. So they believe only in matter and hold that matter under certain conditions of amalgamation gives rise to the living force, which then appears as Purush, the enjoyer, and then by combination of matter and living force, many varieties of manifestations come into existence. So this is the predominant philosophy of atheists, that everything is a chance combination of atoms and molecules or forces of nature. Second type are the people who do not have faith in the Vedas. He says, according to them, all Vedic injunctions are simply theories that have no practical application in life. When Lord Buddha preached his theory of non-violence, he was obliged to deny the authority of the Vedas, and for this purpose, reasons, he is considered by the followers of Vedas to be Nastika. So Astika means that one who has shelter, Nastika is one without shelter. So this is second category. And third is the Mayavadis. Prabhupada says the dangerous Mayavadi theory said by Shankaracharya that God is impersonal does not tally with the injunction of the Vedas. Later he says, but although Mahaprabhu very clearly enunciated that the followers of Lord Buddha's philosophy are Nastikas or atheists, because of the denial of the authority of the Vedas, he considered the Shankarites who wanted to establish the Vedic authority by trickery and who actually followed the Mayavadi philosophy of Buddha's school to be even more dangerous than the Buddhists themselves. And then Prabhupada then concludes that this theory of chance is also there in the life of the devotees. And can anybody share with me how is the theory of chance in the life of devotees?
Krishna, Prabhu, we say that mercy is something that we are not worthy of. And it's only by chance that we get mercy. And this is, when we meet a devotee, give us bhakti, it can be pure coincidence or it can be by mercy.
Yes, very, very, very close, almost there. Anybody else has thoughts?
I was also going to say causeless mercy.
Causeless mercy? Okay,
And I
I'm looking for
remember-
a particular phrase. So in the life of devotees, there is a particular phrase that is applied to encompass this theory of chance.
Ajnata Sukriti.
Agyata Sukriti. Thank you, Prabhu. So Agyata Sukriti, which is basically performing pious activities, spiritually pious activities, unknowingly. Prabhupada says the theory of chance can be best explained by the words Agyata Sukriti, which refers to pious activities without the actor's knowledge. Then he says, but these are also planned. For example, Krishna comes like an ordinary human being. He comes as a devotee like Lord Chaitanya, or he sends his representative, spiritual master, or pure devotee. So what does Prabhupada mean? That the Agyat Sukriti may be there from our end, but the Lord can plan to give us that chance. Right? So it's like when a devotee is preaching, then the devotee is essentially distributing the Bhakti Lata beach. In some cases, the beach takes root. In some cases, it does not. So the devotee is giving everybody a chance, but he's planning for that. They go out, they distribute books, they distribute prasadam, they're planning for that. What are they planning? To give everybody a chance. Some persons take it, some persons do not. That is Agyat Sukriti. Okay. So we'll do the next verse, and then after that we'll pause for discussion. Verses 28-29. Manorutanapādasya dhruvasyapi mahipate priyavritasya rajrishe angasya smatpituhu pitu idarshanamathāneshyam ajasya cha bhavasya cha praladasya baleschapi krityam asti gadabhrata. This is confirmed not only by the evidence of the Vedas, but also by the personal behavior of great personalities like Manu, Uttanpad, Dhruva, Priyavrat, and my grandfather Anga, as well as by many other great personalities and ordinary living entities, exemplified by Maharaj, Prahlad, and Bali, all of whom are theists. Theists believe in the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead who carries the club. So many arguments can be provided to the atheists, but ultimately it is only faith that can show them the right way. If faith in the scriptures is difficult, then one can have faith in the words and the activities of great personalities. So Prithu Maharaj is now taking shelter of this logic. So firstly what he's saying is the principle of Guru Sadhu Shastra, that as the king, he is the de facto guru of the citizens. He's speaking on the basis of the Shastra, and now he's taking shelter of Sadhu. And just not me and the scriptures, but great personalities also. And the second point that he's making is that the point made by Maharaj Yudhishthira, Mahajana Yena Gatha Supanta, that if it is difficult for you to understand and decode the instructions of the scriptures or my instructions, then just know this, that there have been great personalities in the past who have perfected their lives by following the very instructions that I have given you, which is believing in the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being theists. One can follow Varnashram without being a theist. Right? That's essentially, it's a material quality of the mode of goodness. But Prithu Maharaj is not satisfied in simply letting the citizens become pious and be elevated to the heavenly planets. He wants them to connect to the Lord. So which is why now he's talking about personalities that are more contemporary, like his grandfather, Anga. Then he speaks about ancient personalities, like Manu and Utanpad and Dhruva and Priyavarta. So these all are ancient because they appear at the beginning of the day of Brahma, first Manvantara. And Prithu Maharaj is in the Chakshusha Manvantara, and the sixth Manvantara. So they are ancient by the reference of time. And he's talking about, Vishwanath Chakravarti says that those who are extraordinarily famous but appearing in the future. So Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj have yet not appeared. But he's speaking about them because they are mentioned in the Vedas. And he qualifies them as ordinary living entities. And the ordinary here is the connotation is that they appeared in the family of Asuras. Not that they are ordinary. They are extraordinary devotees. But by material considerations, both Prahlad Maharaj and Bali Maharaj, they're descendants of Hiranyakashipu, Asuras, of Kashyap and Aditi. But they are extraordinarily famous. Prabhupada says in the Purport that Narottam Das Thakur states that one has to ascertain the right path of his activities by following the footsteps of great saintly persons and books of knowledge and the guidance of a spiritual master, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastri. Okay, I'll pause here and see what discussion we have.
Prabhu, can I ask two questions? One is, you said in Buddhist philosophy is atheistic, and then Shankaracharya came and introduced Mayavad in order to bring back the Vedic scripture into practice. But then our understanding is Mayavad is even more dangerous than atheism. So is it like taking a risk? Shankaracharya is basically taking a risk of introducing Mayavad in order to introduce theism or Vedic practice. I'm hoping that this is like a because he's an enlightened personality, he knows that this risk is will eventually have a beneficial effect. Not like just like a person going into cardiac surgery, not knowing whether he will survive or not. He's taking a biggest risk, 50% chance that he may not even survive, 50% chance. So is it something like that? Or the way we say it's dangerous seems like Buddhist atheistic philosophy is better than Mayavad. So that's the connotation is. Can you please clarify on that?
Your understanding is pretty accurate, Prabhu. Remember, the statements are being made to those who are aspiring to be devotees. The devotees are aspiring to be devotees. For them, there is nothing more abominable than Mayavad. Basically, Prabhupada differently describes Mayavad as trying to kill the Lord, deny the personal form, become God yourself. Right. So there's nothing more abominable than that. But the matter of fact is, yes, Sripad Shankaracharya, incarnation of Lord Shiva, did that as a service so that he could reintroduce the Vedas. But the fact is that for those who had become atheists, bringing them straight to the platform of servitorship, of personally serving the Lord, is very difficult. So the first step was to introduce the faith in the Vedas, and the second step is essentially to elevate them to the part of the Vedas that talk about Shuddha Bhakti, or the personal form of the Lord. So yes, he did it deliberately. He did it under the instructions of the personality of the Lordhead. He did it for our benefit. And for practicing devotees, it is abominable because it goes against their notion, their understanding, their relationship with the Lord. So these statements are made assuming that the audience is devotees or aspiring to be devotees. Srila Prabhupada always, in a way, it's said that your audience responds to your expectations. Give the person a high goal to achieve, and the person will try and achieve it. Tell a person that, I expect you to do this work in 3 days, you probably do it in 2 days, right? Because they feel that you have invested your confidence in them. And Srila Prabhupada does that in all the proposed Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. He's speaking, expecting the audience to be devotees, and therefore he articulates it from a devotional perspective.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. That's I was thinking like that. So the thing is, then it will be very difficult to say such things to a hardcore Mayavad if we face somebody like that. So we have to have some discrimination or what we speak. I don't know how to deal with these things. We cannot share, as you said, it's for the aspiring devotees, not for those who are very belligerently Mayavad or something like that. It's I think it's a good teaching point for me to be careful where I speak, what I speak. And the second thing is about Varnashrama system that you're talking about. You just very briefly alluded to it, that the Varnashrama is in the mode of goodness. You said that. But we also know the Varnashrama has Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. They all fall in different categories of the modes of nature. So those who are say for example, Shudra, they are all supposed to be in the mode of ignorance. But if they follow Varnashrama, that means they are in the mode of goodness. How do we understand that?
So the purpose of Varnashram is to ultimately elevate people to the mode of goodness. So you're right, the Shudras are not. But if a Shudra is following, and this is Karma Varnashram, if the Shudra is not following, they may fall down or they will continue to be in the mode of ignorance. But by following the prescribed duties, one gets elevated through various varnas until they reach the mode of goodness. The Brahmanas are therefore considered to be the apex of the varnas. And a Brahman who follows the Varnashram perfectly either becomes elevated to the heavenly planets or reaches Brahman. Prithu Maharaj will talk about this in this chapter only, in later verses. So this is how the Varnashram system is designed. So what we have to understand is that the varnas are not being imposed on the people. The people are acquiring the varnas. So many times we say that poor Shudras, they are being made to suffer just because they are Shudra. It's not that. It's that there are some people who have that quality, the quality of being a Shudra. They take that varna. There are some people who have the quality of being valorous and vigorous and administrative. They become Kshatriya. So according to the qualities, they take a varna, and according to that, they get their results. Prithu Maharaj is not interested in Karma Varnashram, which is why he introduces what he has begun to introduce. He will speak more about Devi Varnashram. Devi Varnashram, the results are different. That if a Shudra is following his duties perfectly as an offering to the Lord, that is enough to liberate him. Same for other varnas. Because now the component of bhakti is appearing over here. So when you look at Karma Mishra Bhakti, then the destination of those who perform Karma Mishra Bhakti is not predicated on their varnas. It's not that a Brahman goes somewhere else and a Shudra goes somewhere else. The destination is predicated on the component of bhakti that is introduced by them. Okay, any other thoughts? Okay, let's move on. Verse 30. Dohetradin vrite mrityo soche dharma vimohitan vargasvarga pavarganam prayena katmaya hetuna. Although abominable persons like my father Vena, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion, all the great personalities like those mentioned agree that in this world, the only bestower of benediction of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, or elevation to the heavenly planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Prithu Maharaj, he follows this way of speaking, that he speaks both the positive, the benefits of the positive, and the disadvantages of the negative. And he spoke earlier about if you follow Varnashram, all of us will be elevated. If you don't, all of us will be condemned. Now he says that if you accept the personality of Godhead, your life will be perfect. Previous verse. In this verse, he talks about what happens to those who do not. So those who follow the instruction of the Lord become famous. Those who do not are condemned. The previous was in the former category. Here he speaks about a different kind of personality who happens to be his father. So it's a powerful example because the citizens had personally witnessed how King Vena was condemned to death by the Brahmanas and how his reign was full of misery. So implicitly what Prithu Maharaj is saying, you compare the reign of my father with mine. What is the difference? The difference is that he was an atheist and I am a devotee. So once again, making the same point that Shabda is important, but greater than Shabda is Pratyaksh, that validates Shabda. Right? So he's giving empirical proof now. That you see with your own eyes the difference in the rule between King Vena and me. And the difference was that he did not believe in the personality of Godhead and I am his devotee. Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad says that Prithu says that the God's existence is proved by the experience of wise Swayambhavu Manu, my paternal grandfather. Anga and others got certain achievements by the Supreme Lord's mercy. Prahlad and Bali are included, though they appeared after Prithu, since they are known from the scriptures. Gadabrat indicates the Lord holding a club, having a sweet, attractive form, which is not impersonal. So this is Vishwanath Chakravarti talking about the previous verse. And then he says that others, however, are deplorable. Vena, who was the son of the daughter of death, and others like him who stray from dharma are lamentable. What is implied here by Prithu is that let those who disagree with my opinion at this place be sent to the city of my maternal grandfather, which is essentially Mrityu. The Lord is further described. He's Ekatmya, one who is an independent Swarup. So Aikya is independent and Atmya is here Swarup. So Ekatmya is being used by Prithu Maharaj to emphasize on the personal form of the Lord. Then Vishwanath Chakravarti quotes some verses to substantiate the point of Prithu Maharaj. So one is 2-3-10, Akama Sarvakamo me moksha kama dhanvi. A person who has broader intelligence, whether he is full of material desires, without any material desires, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Lord. And then he quotes from 11:20-32 that everything that can be achieved by fruitive desire, penances, knowledge, detachment, mystic yoga, charity, religious duties, and all other means of perfecting life is easily achieved by my devotee through loving service unto me. If somehow or other my devotee desires promotion to heaven, liberation, or residence in my abode, he easily achieves this benediction. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada speaks about destiny as an empirical way to accept the presence of supreme authority. And this is the point that was made by Prithu Maharaj earlier on, that why is somebody beautiful? Why is somebody not? And one might say it is fate, but fate is an empirical way to accept the presence of an supreme authority. Prabhupada said it is generally found that even if two men have similar moral standard of ethics, honesty, and morality, their positions are still not the same. Similarly, in economic development, it is seen that two persons may work very hard, day and night, the results are still not the same. Right? So this is something we all have empirical understanding, probably even personal understanding, that some cases we have worked hard, another person not working that hard has achieved much higher results. Some cases it's been the opposite. We see the person working very, very hard but still not achieve the same kind of results that we have. And we see that all around us also. Prabhupada is re-emphasizing that through this we can understand there is a presence of a superior authority. So as I mentioned, a lot of these verses are foundational philosophy verses. And law of karma, the deducing the presence of Lord, personal and impersonal form, varnashram, they're very, very foundational philosophies. But they have been put in Bhagavatam at this stage, of the fourth canto, because Srila Vyasadeva considers it's important to remind us, and Srila Prabhupada follows the same mode and essentially reminds us about the whole philosophy again, so that if there is any doubt, it gets clarified, and if not, through repetition, there is emphasis and there is a greater adherence to it. Okay, moving on to verse 31. Yatapad seva viruchis tapasvina ashesh janmo pachitam malam diya sadhyakshanotya anvaham edhati sati yatha padangusta viniheshrita sarit. By the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity can immediately cleanse the dirt which has accumulated in their minds through innumerable births. Like the Ganges water, which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, such a process immediately cleanses the mind, and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. So this is a summation, and in a way it's making the same point. The point was developed gradually, and now that point is being re-emphasized with details. That the success that is achieved by those who are performing pure bhakti to the Lord cannot be achieved by those practicing austerities. What to speak of persons who are practicing fruitive activities? So Vishwanath Chakravarti said, this point is explained in 2 verses. And austerities cannot remove the contamination in the intelligence. And so essentially, what is the point being made? So in the Nectar of Devotion, we studied, right, that when one performs karma, then there is bija. There is a seed that gets planted in our heart, in our subtle consciousness. Now, when we suffer the results of that karma, then that reaction, it wipes away the karma, good or bad, but not the seed. The seed stays. This is the same point that Maharaj Parikshit makes to Sukadeva Goswami in the beginning of the 6th canto, when he was talking about Praishchit. He said, by Praishchit you can destroy pras by his activities, but just like an elephant taking a bath and getting dirty again, the propensity remains. But bhakti, it uproots the bija. And when that is gone, then the taste for the sat increases day by day. And Prithu Maharaj is giving a glimpse of a taste for what? He's saying a taste for the lotus feet of the Lord. So one might say, what is great about the lotus feet of the Lord? Prithu Maharaj says the water of the river Ganges emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. So you know the greatness of Ganges. Now you know the greatness of the lotus feet of the Lord. So you know the greatness of the Lord. Prabhupada in the purport, he expands on the example. He says the water of the Ganges, even if it is materially contaminated, has immense potency because of its contact with the lotus feet of the Lord. So similarly, material endeavors can only be successful by the mercy of the Lord. Now the mercy may come indirectly, which is through the law of karma. So in the sense that the Lord has given the do's and don'ts, and one follows it, one gets access to his mercy, which is essentially the indirect mercy through the law of karma, or one can get it directly by bhakti. But the message is that simply by endeavors, one cannot be assured of success. For ensuring success, one needs to take shelter of the Lord. Whether you take it indirectly or directly, either way, you need to take shelter of the Lord. So better to take direct shelter of the Lord. Prabhupada says, being a responsible king, Prithu Maharaj recommends that everyone take shelter of the personality of Godhead and thus be immediately purified. Okay, verse 32. Vinirduta shesha manomala puman asanga vigyan vishesha viryavan yadangrimule kritaketanaha punar na samskritam klesha vaham prapadyate. When a devotee takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is completely cleansed of all misunderstanding or mental speculation, and he manifests renunciation. This is possible only when one is strengthened by practicing Bhakti Yoga. Once having taken shelter at the root of the lotus feet of the Lord, a devotee never comes back to this material existence, which is full of threefold miseries. The Prabhupada says that devotional service is characterized by Vairagya and Gyan. Gyan refers to the understanding that one is not his body, and Vairagya means disinterest in sense gratification. These two primary principles of separation from material bondage can be realized on the strength of Bhakti Yoga. Thus, when a devotee is fixed in loving service of the Lord, of the lotus feet of the Lord, he will never come back to the material existence, as confirmed by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita. Taktadeyam punarjanma neti mameti sa Arjuna. This is the chapter 4. Then janma karma cha me divyam yume veti taktadeyam punarjanma neti mameti sa Arjuna. So again, this is a principle that Vaishnavas are very familiar with, that bhakti results in jnana and vairagya. Vairagya, it results in material detachment, and jnana results in spiritual attachment. Vairagya means that one gets an aversion to enjoying materially, and jnana, which is knowledge of the self, begins with Atma Jnana, and then it expands to the knowledge of the Lord, and then to Sambandha Jnana. It results in attachment to the lotus feet of the Lord. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says that the results of bhakti is vairagya and jnana. Right? So Prabhupada is essentially equating Vigyan with Vairagya, considering that Vigyan is the experiential aspect of Gyan. So one who has the knowledge that he is not the body will develop detachment from it. So by performing bhakti, one automatically gets Gyan and Vigyan. So essentially Prabhupada is expanding the scope of Gyan. Gyan is the understanding one's relationship with the Lord. Gyan is understanding that you are not the body. Both are happening concomitantly. And experiential aspect of Gyan, that I'm not the body, is Vairagya. So the experiential aspect of Gyan is Vigyan, which is why essentially Prabhupada is equating Vigyan with Vairagya. So this is the potency of bhakti, that by performing bhakti, one automatically gets both Gyan and Vigyan. Right? Otherwise, the conversion from Gyan to Vigyan is a laborious process. But through bhakti, one gets not only the intellectual understanding, but also the experiential realization. No other process gives that. Right? Karma, the focus is on the experiential part of it. Do this, do that, do this. And then through your experiences, you will eventually get some realizations. So the progress is very slow. Now the path of Gyan, it only gives intellectual understanding. Sankhya, that I know this, I am soul, and there is a personality of Godhead. Bhakti gives both. It gives not only the intellectual understanding, it also gives the experiential aspect of it. And in addition to this, it attracts the mercy of the Lord. So Prabhupada explains this by giving the example of a person eating. That when a person eats, three things happens simultaneously: tushti, pushti, and kshudapayo. So tushti is satisfaction, that now my hunger is going. Pushti is nourishment. Person was feeling weak, now he's being nourished. And kshudapayo is the pleasure of eating. So bhakti, in the same way, it gives simultaneous attachment to the spiritual and detachment from the material. In the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, this verse describes these three aspects of bhakti: that devotion, direct experience of the personality of Godhead, and detachment from other things. These three things happen simultaneously. So what are the three things? Devotion, direct experience of the Lord, and detachment from other things. And then it gives the analogy in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously, and increasingly with each bite of a person engaged in eating. So detachment from other things is the material aspect of it. Direct experience of the Lord is the attachment part of it, and devotion is the process. So it gives all the three aspects. Now, one might say that if you take the analogy of eating to the next level, then there is a fourth thing that also happens, which is virakti. That when you eat, your first morsel will give you a lot of tushti, pushti, and kshudapayo, pleasure. Second morsel will still give you. 20th morsel will give you less. And then after some time say, I can't eat anymore. Take the food away. That is virakti. But this is where one should take the analogy as in the same spirit that it has been given. Because in bhakti, the opposite happens. That as you eat more, your hunger also increases, and your desire to eat increases, you relish more. So it's a self-perpetuating cycle. Right? So the analogy does not hold true in all respects. So just framing analogies is important, that The analogies do not contain any spiritual truths in them. They're only used to explain facts that are difficult to understand. But the analogy should only be accepted in the context that the presenter is framing them. So it is completely depending on the presenter. Then they may take one aspect of it and present and not take another aspect of it, because the analogy itself does not contain any truth. It's not that the process of eating is a spiritual experience. So one might say tushti, pushti, kshuddha, payu, and virakti. So three things are happening, the fourth thing should also happen. No. It's just that these three things are being used to explain a particular thing more effectively, because everybody has experience with eating, they can relate to it. Okay, I'll do two more verses, and then after that we'll pause for discussion. Verse 33. Tvameva yuyam vajadatma vritibhi mano vachakaya gunasva karmabhi amayanakam dugambari pankajam yathadhira yatadhikara vasistartha siddhaye. Prithu Maharaj advised his citizens, engage your minds, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties. And I'm sorry, let me read it again. Prithu Maharaj advised his citizens, engaging your mind, your words, your bodies, and the results of your occupational duties, and being always open-minded. You should all render devotional service to the Lord. According to your abilities and the occupation in which you are situated, you should engage your service at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with full confidence and without reservation. Then you will surely be successful in achieving the final objective of your life. So Vishwanath Chakrabarti, he presents a conversation over here that the citizens might say that, my dear king, we are busy in our household work. How can we do Shuddha Bhakti? How can we give up all this and do pure devotional service? So Prithu Maharaj is advising them on Karma Mishra Bhakti. He is saying, you worship the Lord by the actions of the Varna. What is this? Devi Varnashram. Right? So practice protection, agriculture, and service. Along with these occupations, worship with the functions of the mind, body, voice, and body, remembering the Lord, chanting and offering obeisances. Or worship with actions of mind, voice, and body, and with your occupational duties for livelihood. If one's work is engaged for the Lord's service, or at least some portion is engaged on a steady basis, then that becomes bhakti. Those who have determined the goal without surpassing the rules of their varna should worship him in this way. Or those who by their prescribed occupation for the pleasure of the Lord want to make it perfect should worship the Lord in this way. So essentially, Prithu Maharaj is presenting Devi Varnashram. That don't worry about giving up the activities that you do, like taking care of your family or your cows or agriculture. But as you do them, you worship the Lord. And that will become bhakti. So he uses an important word over here in the verse called Yatha Adhikar. And Prabhupada explains that Yatha Adhikar means as per one's level of advancement. So Brahma worships according to his level of advancement, as does a simple Shudra. Both are equally potent. Right? So this goes back to the discussion we were having, that in a Karma Varnashram, they are not equally potent. But in Devi Varnashram, they are equally potent. Now, in Karma Varnashram, the results are, because they are determined by karma, they are potentially non-linear. Just because the confluence of karma is very difficult to understand. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjun that if you execute your duty as a warrior, you will get elevated to the heavenly kingdoms. He's not saying you'll become a Brahman. He's saying you'll get elevated to a heavenly kingdom. In other scriptures, it is mentioned that when a varna is being executed properly, they get elevated to high varnas. Both statements are correct, and the understanding is that the distinction is based on the nature of the karma, the circumstances in which it is performed. So back to Yathadikar. Yathadikar, Srila Prabhupada says that, and he quotes 932, that everybody is Striyo, Vaishyas, Tada Shudras, Tepi Yanti Param Gatim. That whether they are women or Vaishyas or Shudras, when they worship the Lord, they attain the supreme abode. And then Prabhupada quotes 1846, where Krishna says that so karmanatam abhicharcha, that one has to worship the personality of Godhead by one's occupational duties. Because of this, Krishna in 413 says Chaturvarnyam Maya Shrishta, that he has constructed the Varnashram system. So this not only gives hope to everyone, it also gives a practical and actionable course to make advancements. A Shudra does not have to become a Brahman to go back to Godhead, just as a woman does not have to take birth in a man's body, or a human being does not have to take birth as a demigod. Because if you look at it, even a human body form of life is pretty low down. We say that it is very high, but Radha Govind Maharaj in his lectures, he says that for the Devas, the human form of life is like we look at pigs in stool or insects in stool. So for they consider it to be that abominable. And when we aspire to go back to Godhead, it is like us saying that somehow an insect in a stool is going back to Godhead. But that is the potency of Varnashram, especially Devi Varnashram. That just by staying in the respective positions, executing the duties for the pleasure of the Lord, one attains perfection. Okay. The next purport is actually a very long purport. So I'm actually going to stop over here and we will resume our discussion on verse 34, from verse 34 next time.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, I can hear you.
Yeah. A clarification question, actually. In our sadhana, not even sadhana, I can say in the ISKCON, what Prabhupada has given, like Harinam Diksha, then Brahman Diksha to everyone, irrespective of what a person carries with the Varna, right? Even now, a devotee will be good at certain things based on his karma or his own nature, but he is getting into that Brahmanical. And to your this verse explanation, whether he is in household grihastha or anything, if it is related to bhakti, that's where the elevation comes in. But here, so let us say I'm a Shudra, but I'm a Brahmana as well, right? So how do you connect that? By Varna, whatever, if I'm Shudra, now I'm acting as a Brahmana.
So when one takes to bhakti, then the varnas don't really apply to that person, right? This discussion that is happening is essentially making progress through varnashram. Prabhupada will mention later in purport that that's the indirect way. The direct way is following the 9 process of devotional service. So we don't rely on Varnashram. The name saying that we are Brahman initiated does not mean that we belong to the Varna Brahman. It's basically a notion that is applied to indicate that the person is ready to perform deity worship or something. Because then before Brahman initiation, we should have got Kshatriya initiation and Vaishya initiation, right? We should have gone through those stages. But the Brahman over there doesn't refer to the Varna Brahman. It refers more to one Brahman as opposed to Prabhupada, I forget the Sanskrit, but that one who is situated in Brahman, one who understands the nature of the Lord. Brahman is nature of the soul and nature of the Lord. One who is understanding that person is then qualified to render more personal service. Right. So once you take to devotion, the Varnas, as you rightly point out, everybody is a Shudra in the age of Kali. So the Varnas don't really apply.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I don't know if it's a question or a comment. And Srila Prabhupada used to give that example of a body, like the Brahmana is a head, and the Kshatriya, the arms, and the belly is a Vaishya, and the feet are the Sudra. And that means we need all the parts of the body to make it function. And maybe the feet are doing the walking, maybe laborious, and the arm work, but without the arm and the leg, the body does not have any value. And now should we consider, just like in the context we just read, that even a Shudra, if he follow the right path, he can get liberated. That means, is it a hierarchy or is it horizontal? Everybody are equal. Is equal, and then there's no hierarchy. Of course, the Brahmana is supposed to guide all the other part of the body. But if like Prabhupada gives that example, if one day the hen said, I want to enjoy the food, and then it doesn't feed the mouse, and the belly get weak, and the arm get weak and die. Of course, the whole body die. But in that context, I don't think there's any superiority. Of course, Brahmanas are intelligent, are supposed to guide, but is it flat or is it hierarchy?
If you're looking at Karma Varnashram, there's definitely a hierarchy. Right. So you're right, that there is cooperation amongst all four, but the Brahmanas are supposed to guide and the others are supposed to follow. So the perfection of the Brahmanas is that they become teachers and they give instructions, they become spiritual masters, and others others follow. In terms of making advancement, by performing the duties that are relevant to one's Varna, all the Varnas make advancement. So the Shudra will make advancement by following the duties that are allocated to the Shudra class. And same thing for the other Varnas. So one cannot say that a Brahman who is not following his prescribed duties is superior to a Shudra who is following his prescribed duties. Right? One has to say the opposite. So that way, the following of the prescribed duties is potent. The results will be different, because if a Shudra performs the prescribed duty, then he gets elevated to something. That's where the clarity is not there. He might get elevated to a Brahman, he might get elevated to a Kshatriya, he might get elevated to some different position. A Brahman who's following his prescribed duties gets liberation. So the destination is different. but the potential for making advancement is equally available in all varnas. And this is when we are talking about karma varnashram. Devi varnashram, there's no difference. Where a devotee of the Lord, be he a Shudra or a Brahman, can both go back to Godhead on the strength of their devotion. Right? So that's different, because we are so strongly anchored in the conception of bhakti. The notion of hierarchy is a little difficult for us to digest. And we expect that everybody should get the same destination. That's what bhakti promises us. Anybody promising bhakti will get the lotus feet of the Lord. But karma by nature is regimented and hierarchical, and gives results according to what you do, where you do, etc. Because if you look at the activities performed by a Shudra, he's essentially performing pious activities, right? So he's performing the activities that are given to him as per the scriptures. But the karma that he performs has its own reactions. When a Brahman performs his prescribed duties, then there are different kinds of karma. So even though they're both performing the prescribed duties, they're performing different karmas. And because of different karmas, the reactions are different. So the destinations will be different. But what the destination will be, and that correlation is something that is not explicitly mentioned, just explained as a principle.
Yeah, to point, Prabhu, I think, this concept of, Sudra and all that, I think the Britishers has really messed it up, just to divide, people of, ancient India, to create that, rebellious mentality between them. I think they are the one who messed it up, because you remember, if we go to, for example, Gita Nagari, you will see, somebody is working in the field, as you were giving the example, and then later he will be the one doing the arti. And we have even seen, I forget the name of the sannyasi, the Maharaja was there. He was driving a tractor, if you look at him, you won't even know he's a sannyasi. And, I think this was the ancient India way that it was. And then when the British came, they messed it all over, and, to create that hierarchy and to make people fight between each other.
That did. We were already, because before the Britishers came, the caste system was there. The caste system it's basically a devolution of the varnashram system. A caste system is you're born into a certain caste, and they have all these connotations of caste. What do they say, that a Shudra has to go through 10 million births before he gets a body of a Brahman. So they have all these things which are coming from questionable sources. And essentially the Britishers realized that this was a good tool to create further divisiveness. So they started acknowledging the caste system, recognizing it, and gave further life to it. It's a process that goes on even today.
Yeah.
Even today, you have this scheduled caste, scheduled tribe reservations, which essentially is saying if you're born into a lower caste, now in this case they're getting privilege, but the underlying statement still is being made that we recognize the fact that you're born in a lower caste. So just by birth you're lower caste, and there's no Vedic support for that. Nobody gets a caste by birth, right? So this is a distinction that, yeah, you're right. It was institutionalized by the Britishers. It's still being carried on. Now it's a politically sensitive topic. Nobody wants to touch it because it will result in a lot of political chaos.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, so we'll end here. Panchakalpatarubhyascha krita sindhubhyaiva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Nandkoti Vaishnavin ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Thai Gaur Premanande, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you very
Hare
much.
Krishna, Hare Krishna.